UFC Fight Night, Mexico City, featuring Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno, just took place a couple of days ago. I'm going to touch base on a couple of fights on the main card of that. I'm also going to touch base on Alexander Volkanovski losing to Ilia Topuria in the main card of UFC 298, what he should do from there, the pathways he can take in order to get back to the title, and what he should do from this point. I'm also going to talk about some of these upcoming fight cards and just how lackluster they've been and how lackluster they're going to be up to UFC 300. And yeah, we're just going to kind of touch base on a couple of things. So, first off, we're going to start off with Brandon Royval beating Brandon Moreno by decision, 47 48 and 46 49, 48 47. So, it was an all right fight for it being in Mexico City at 7,500 feet above sea level. It's absolutely amazing the fact that they were able to go 5 rounds at that pace. Now, I don't see why people are giving Herb Dean such a hard time in the 5th round for separating the people over and over again. They were having a really good fight. It was a really good brawl. I think Brandon Royval had the first and the second round, and Brandon Moreno kind of got the third round, kind of stole it in the last 30 seconds. He kind of withered away in the fourth round, but he could have gotten that just by strikes alone. But the 5th round kind of just came to how the fight was going to be determined. And so for that 5th round, I don't blame Herb Dean for splitting them up immediately as soon as they got into the clinch. Like, for Herb Dean to do that, it makes it to where it's the fans' fight rather than the fighters' fight, which is bad on the fighters because, Brandon Royval probably wanted to try to get a takedown in the last round, try to seal that round, get, the judge's decision on his side. But you've seen Herb Dean do this multiple times in the fifth in championship rounds where he wants them to go for it in the last rounds. They don't want them to coast, especially in the main event, because that's what the people want to see. So, I mean, with that, it was a really good fight. I mean, it's kind of lackluster because with Brandon Royval now losing 3 times to Alexander Pantoja, and then we got Brandon Moreno, who's lost to Alexander Pantoja. Like, they don't really deserve an immediate rematch. And then they got Amir Albazi, who's won a couple, lost a couple. They got Kai Kara France, who's, lost a couple, won a couple. They got, they have fighters. They got Manel Cap, but Manel Cap missed weight, so his fight was canceled. So it's a weird time in the flyweight division right now. I do hope that they kind of put this on the back burner a little bit. Kind of wait a couple of weeks, see how, Umar Nurmagomedov does, see how, people in the bantamweight division do, see if Alexander Pantoja wants to go up to the bantam division, try to, get a couple of wins up there. Because right now, none of the fighters on the flyweight roster, as I'm looking, they don't have any win streaks. There's a couple that have a few. They have like 2 or 3, but there's none that really stand out above the rest to really deserve a title shot in the 125-pound division. So I feel like Alexander Pantoja should probably get the loser of Kai Kara France Manel Cap, because I feel like Kai Kara France and Manel Cap is a number one contenders fight now because it's a fresh fight. It's a new person that Alexander Pantoja has not faced yet. I feel like Brandon Moreno should take on the winner. Or no, take on the loser. And then Brandon Royval should take on the winner. I apologize. Um, so yeah, no, flyweight's in a weird division right now. It's in a weird place. It's in a weird place. But moving along, the co-main event we had Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Everybody thought Yair Rodriguez was going to win this by decision, which I mean I did too. But nobody expected for Brian Ortega to get a submission in the 3rd round when he was really terrible on the feet. I got to be honest, he's terrible on the feet, but he has an incredible ground game, an incredible awareness once it gets to the ground to be able to get into he thinks of the position before the submission, and then he gets the submission. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a different way of thinking once it gets to the ground. The only thing is that usually he didn't work on his wrestling. In this fight, it seems like he worked on it a little bit. Now, Yair Rodriguez isn't exactly the best on takedown defense in the featherweight division, but he's better than a lot of other people. He's better than Giga Chikadze. He's better than maybe Calvin Cater. But all in all, I don't think people were thinking Brian Ortega was going to win this. Yair Rodriguez is absolutely weak for the featherweight division. Like, you'd think that a person that's a black belt in Taekwondo would have some serious power on his punches, but once it got to the ground and he was putting on ground and pound, he was doing that weird like little backhand fist. Which, I mean, it's fine if you want to try to get the ref in to try to stop it immediately, but it doesn't really work when the person's fighting back. So with that, I feel like Brian Ortega should take on man, what should he take on in the featherweight division? Because he doesn't deserve a title shot. Because this is his first win in what, 4 years, 3 years. He doesn't deserve it. Who's in the top? Who's in the top three of the featherweights? Okay, so we got so Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett would be an okay fight, but I don't see that being a great fight. They had Yair Rodriguez there, and then yeah, no, I was about to say they got Max Holloway, but Max Holloway's in the lightweight division, and with how that fight went the first time, I don't really want to see that the second time. I think you should fight Josh Emmett. Probably just either that or sit on the shelf for a bit, like he usually does. You know, just enjoy that win. Yair Rodriguez, I think he should take a little bit of time off. You know, really practice on completing his game rather than trying to focus on one element and trying to exceed on that element of the game, aka the stand up. But once he does come back, I'd love to see him up against a person like Bryce Mitchell, up against a person like maybe Giga Chikadze for UFC 301, or maybe like I don't know, just somebody from 5 to 10. Rank 5 to 10 would be perfect. Because it's like he's already fought up against Josh Emmett. He's already fought up against Max Holloway. He's already fought up against in Calvin Cater. No, he didn't fight up against Calvin Cater. But Calvin Cater is going up against Aljamain Sterling, so it doesn't really make sense. Yeah, no, I feel like he should just wait for a 5 to 10. I mean, it's just this entire card just threw two divisions into a big loop. Because now it's like Ilya Taporia doesn't have anybody that's a number one contender, a rightful number one contender, except for maybe Max Holloway. Max Holloway's in lightweight. He's going up against Justin Gaethje in April. Like, that makes no sense. So, with that, it's very weird, and that brings me to my point that the UFC fight cards this year are very subpar, especially this next month. These next few weeks are absolutely terrible for UFC cards. You got Rosenstruck versus Geziev, which I mean is fine because it's a heavyweight bout, but it's in the UFC Apex. It's in the UFC. There's a 5 round heavyweight fight that's going to be in the UFC Apex with no crowd. They're going to be throwing leather for about 5 minutes, and then they're going to be tired for 20. Like, you have Gaziev? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing him. Gaziev, who's a really good wrestler, really good on the ground, has really good power, but his stand-up isn't fundamentally sound. He's just, he's that age of the obese heavyweight fighters, which is perfectly fine. Those people work in the heavyweight division, but they're being, fizzled out by people that are like, you know, Surreal Gone, people who are athletic, Thomas or Jalton Almeida, people like that. But having Rosenstruck and Giziev as the main event for a UFC Fight Night card, and then you got Tyson Pedro as the co-main. You got Muhammad Mokaev versus Alex Perez, which is an alright fight. You got Umar Nurmagomedov versus I have absolutely no idea who this guy is, Almakin. And I mean, you got Matt Schnell. I mean, that's not a great card. That's not a great card, you know. And I mean, I get it because they want to have a card every single week because they want to get the fighters active. They want to get the fighters in there. But when the fighters aren't taking fights, especially the top tier ones, the Conor McGregors, the Michael Chandlers, Charles Oliveira in a way, because he'll have a fight once a year, but if he was healthy and he made weight consistently, he'd be fighting 3 times a year. So it's very weird because they have the Rosenstruck fight, and then next week they got O'Malley Vera 2. That's a perfect card, great card. O'Malley Vera, O'Malley O'Malley Charles O'Malley and Charles Vera. I still got that wrong. Cheeto Vera. Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis for the co-main. They got Holland versus MVP. That could headline a fight night easy. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Mena as the last fight on the main card. That could highlight a fucking fight night main event. They got Piotr Young versus I think it's Song Yadong. Curtis Blades, Jalton Almeida on the prelims. That could be one. Macy Barber, no. Gamrot Dos Anjos. The fact that Maktush Gamrot and Rafael Dos Anjos are on the prelims of 299. And then next week, you got Tai Tuivasa and Marcin Tybura. Two people who are, I'm pretty sure, barely in the top 15 of the heavyweight division. Headlining a fight night card. Headlining a fight night card. Not being on a fight night card. Headlining that fight night card. Battle versus Luza. No idea. Ovin St. Preux versus Nchekwu. That's an alright fight. That's an alright fight. But it being in the UFC Apex, it's just, you're putting on a fight to put on a fight, you know? Thiago Moises versus Brad Riddell. That's an alright prelim fight. And then the next week they got a women's flyweight. They got bantamweight. Or no, flyweight, strawweight. Fuck. Ooh, flyweight, strawweight, bantamweight. So Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. I don't know what weight class Rose is at this point. Like, she tried to go against Manon Fiorot, and that was an absolute horrible fight. Then they got, is that Justin Tafa? Justin Tafa's coming back after fucking 4 weeks? 5 weeks, basically? Yeah, no, as a co-main, it's like, nah, dude. You aren't supposed to do this. You're not supposed to be just giving us this shit week in and week out. Aaron Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. That's an alright card. But then you got, like, Chris Weidman versus... Who's that? Justin Silva? Thiago Silva? That's alright. Yeah, no, I was about to say, like, they are looking for fight nights. Marvin Vittori versus Allen. I mean, that's alright. Dumont versus Durandamy. But then you got, like, Hung Choi versus fucking, who is this guy? Sherry? Like, the fights that they have here are absolutely not up to par with what the UFC should be putting on right now. In between UFC 299 to UFC 300, there is not a single main event that is worthy of being a main event for a fight night. I don't see what they're doing here. Like, they have great fights on UFC 299. They got Gilbert Burns. Jack Della Maddalena. They got MVP Kevin Holland. They got multitudes of fights on that fight night card that they can spread out to other fight night cards. But they just put everything on UFC 299. They put some of the stuff on UFC 300, which we'll get to in a minute. And then they put a little bit on UFC 301. Like, it's not going to work out. This is not going to be a good month for UFC. Except for March 9th, UFC 299. But after that, it's going to take a massive dump. Like, they're taking a massive dump on their fan base right now. But, either way, we still have to get it, and we still have to watch it. So, regardless, it happened. And so, on to my next point. I'll wait until the 15-minute mark. Fuck it, because I'm about that money, even though I have no subscribers. So my next point is I feel as though Alex Volkanovski should not rematch Ilia Topuria. I feel as though that is a horrible decision. If Alex was to rematch Ilia Topuria, he would lose. Okay, I'm being honest here. He would lose. It would be like 4 out of the 10 fights he would lose that fight up against Ilya, but I don't want him to take that chance, especially as soon as they're thinking. Because with how Dana said, oh, they're going to UFC Spain, they're thinking like towards the end of the year. I want Volkanovski to take at least 6 to 7 months off, you know, before getting into a fight camp, you know, because like that was a bad knockout. That was a bad knockout, and he was coming back after a head kick knockout against Islam Makhachev, a 155 pounder. Like that is hard to really come back to, and so I worry I worry that he does become the next Tony Ferguson, where he takes loss after loss after loss, trying to find the best opponent to go up against. And that's what I feel is the worst case scenario. He goes up against Ilia Topuria. He loses. Then he tries to rematch like a Yair Rodriguez. He tries to go up against Brian Ortega again. And like he just finds ways to lose the next few fights. I feel like considering he has already established himself as the GOAT in the featherweight division, he should go up to the lightweight division. He should try to get those money fights as soon as possible. I would love to see Alex Volkanovski versus Charles Oliveira. I would love to see Alexander Volkanovski versus Michael Chandler. I would love to see Alex Volkanovski versus Conor McGregor, for crying out loud. That would be a great fight to see both of them together. Two, well, former featherweight goats in their respective rights. The fact that, Jose Aldo lost to Conor McGregor, the fact that Alex Volkanovski lost to Ilia Topuria, and then he's supposed to try to avenge that with Conor McGregor being like, you know what, I can't go up against Ilia again because because like here's the other thing is the fact of he's what 35 right now, around there, mid to late 30s at least. He has to think of the money fights. Because now it's not about fighting. It's not about legacy. It's about his health and his safety. You know? Bars. But he needs to think about that first. I would love to see him versus Dustin Poirier. There are many fights in the lightweight division, and there aren't a lot of fights in the featherweight division. Now with him cutting all that weight too, it makes it to where it's such a good decision for him to do that. If he wants to get straight back into it with Ilya, fine. But don't rush it like you just did. That's the one thing I don't want Alex Volkanovski to do. He's great in his wrestling. He's great in his footwork, his timing, his feints. But he leaves his chin up. And Ilya's good at finding that chin. You know? He's done it against, 155ers before. And so, no, yeah. It's like, I want to see Volkanovski have his best time now. Because he's put in the work. He's put in the dedication in order to become the GOAT of the featherweight division. Well, second, next to Jose. But even still, it's like, I still compare Alex Volkanovski to the same, if not better than Jose, in the fact of who he's defended against. He's defended against people who are more dynamic in their own rights, rather than the people who Jose Aldo has faced, who is a jack of all trades with one good thing added on top of that, like Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes was a great wrestler. He was okay with his footwork. He was okay with his cardio. He was okay with his power. He was just a great wrestler. And so you just focus on the wrestling, and then it's a fight. He won most of those. But Alex had to game plan against Yair Rodriguez, a black belt in Taekwondo. He had to game plan against Brian Ortega, who's a submission artist. You know? But, yeah, no, I feel like that's what he should do. And yeah, no, I was about to say like I'm so sorry. I looked at fucking Joe Pyfer and I'm like, why is Joe Pyfer and Hermanson headlining a card? And then I remember that was February. Oh man, this is a bad year for fight night cards. This is a bad year for fight night cards. Speaking of bad fight night cards, let's kind of talk about UFC 300 because I have tickets to UFC 300. I have tickets. We have we have 45 days up until UFC 300. We have 45 days. And right now, what we have headlining the card is Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. That is a perfectly fine fight as a card. Just as a card. If it was UFC 301, I'd be perfectly fine with that. UFC 305, perfectly fine with that. UFC 300, having that as the main event card, are you trying to make us mad as a fan base? And like I would think to it like, "Oh, okay, they're just having that, but they're having a bunch of other really good fights right underneath that. Zhang Weili versus Yang Xiaonan. You know who Yang Xiaonan is? Neither do I. I just looked her up. She has a couple of good wins. She's a good striker, but she is nowhere near the wrestling capabilities of Zhang Weili. And considering Zhang Weili's last fight against Amanda Lemos, that's going to be a snooze fest. A little bit of a shit break for everybody. And I mean, like, you have Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. That's a good fight, but it's kind of a gimmick fight. It's like neither of them really go up the ranks or down the ranks if they win or lose. You know, like Max Holloway, win or lose this fight, could get Conor McGregor, could get almost anybody in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje, win or lose, would probably get the next title shot. If not, he'd have to fight like one more person. But I mean, like they got okay fights, but it's not like what he said. Dana White has been saying for months this is a fight night card that is above the rest. And when you look at UFC 299 compared to UFC 300, it doesn't compare. It doesn't. You have MVP versus Kevin Holland like as the first fight of the main card for UFC 299. And for the first fight for the main card of UFC 300, you have Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar. Which, don't get me wrong, that's a perfectly fine fight. But you have that comparative to Jack Della Maddalena and Gilbert Burns. Oh, but don't worry, we got Alexander Rakic and you know we got people who were champions and people who are champions. Yeah, but we need that fire underneath all of this. That one guy that's going to just throw down metal at a heavier weight class. Because another thing that people don't realize is that other than Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill, I don't think there's a single weight class that's 205 in most of the card. Like, it's mostly lightweights or below. And I don't like that. I don't like that. Like, it makes it a technical fight, but sometimes it makes it so boring because it's a chess match rather than a checkers match. In heavyweight, you could throw down metal and just hope something lands. At least in this time of the heavyweight division. But like bantamweight, featherweight, flyweight, lightweight, even sometimes welterweight, people know so much about the other fighter and themselves and what they know that they try to figure each other out like chess. And it makes it so boring for the first 15 minutes of it. And it's like, considering I bought tickets to it, it's very underwhelming the fact that we are doing this. And it's like, I even look on the UFC page, UFC 300 Countdown, Can't Stop Us, Unrivaled Greatness, April 13th, Saturday. There's a gold flag of UFC 300. You know who's carrying the flag? Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is carrying the flag, and he's not even on the card. They said that he's not even going to fight in 2023. Now, yes, if they do put him on the card, that's perfectly fine. But if they do put him on the card with Michael Chandler, where the fuck are they going to put him on the main card? What, are they going to put it above fucking Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan? A number one contenders fight? Are they going to put it fucking above the championships? Because, you know, that's what that's what Conor McGregor deserves for not fighting since, what, 2021? Bro, I had COVID in 2021. Bro, like, it's absolutely insane the fact that they're thinking of putting this as the main page of it, but they're not even putting him on the card. Put him on the card if you're going to put him on the home page of UFC 300. God. Like, I'm sorry. It's just, it pisses me off when they fucking hype it up for so long. Dana White has been going on multiple podcasts going like, oh, it's going to knock your socks off. What we got planned for you guys. Bro, you gave us Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira 3 years ago was not even in the UFC, and you barely wanted him in the UFC. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then you got Jamal Hill, who, in his own respective right, a beast of an MMA fighter. A beast of an MMA fighter. But he won the title against Glover Teixeira, a fucking 43-year-old fucking man. That's it. And it was a decision. It was a 5-round decision, which was close. It was a split decision. Like, if the judge had the fight wrong, Glover would have won the title. That's what I don't get about this. Is that, like, Dana White was saying, oh, this is going to blow your socks off. My socks are still on. I got 2 pairs now. Because this is how cold this card is looking. Like, I mean, the prelims are stacked. The prelims are great, except for that Bo Nickel fight. I kind of want Bo Nickel to lose just so that it's a little bit better. But, yeah, no. It's like, this card is just absolutely bad. Let's see what happens when I go on the UFC 300 anniversary. 30th anniversary. Changing the game. 3 decades from a phenomenon to an unrivaled force. Oh. I mean, I would say it's an unrivaled force, but considering what I'm about to talk about with the PFL and Bellator fight card, like, I don't know, man. These next, like, 5 fight cards are really going to determine how the next 50 fight cards are going to be. Because, like, if they just got, like, fights they put together and are like, let's put them on, like, it's going to be a bad year. It's going to be a bad year for the UFC. But what it hasn't been a bad year for, though, is the PFL. PFL has been really good so far. Now, they did just have their fight between, now, they had their PFL and their Bellator card. There's only one fight that I really want to talk about. And that's that heavyweight fight that they had between Ryan Bader and, who is it? Let me check it up real quick. Because it was Ryan Bader, a person who is a light heavyweight, against, I think it was like Francisco Pereira. No, Renan Ferreira. Renan Ferreira is absolutely a behemoth. Let me look up his reach. Because his reach is absolutely monstrous. Because he knocked out Ryan Bader in 21 seconds. Which, I mean, it seemed like he had a 1.5 feet of reach on him. Which is absolutely crazy. But Renan Ferreira, who is 12-3 with 3 no contests, a 4-0 record so far, is looking pretty good so far. He has gone against okay talent. You know, he did go up against Fabricio Verdum, and then he did go up against Carl Sulemanata, who's one of those obese heavyweights, so it was probably just a can match. But they had Renan Ferreira versus Ryan Bader, who Renan Ferreira, if people don't know, very athletically gifted. I believe he was a Taekwondo black belt, if I'm not mistaken. If not, he's a very good striker, very good technique-wise, very long reach, like very, very long reach. Knocked out Ryan Bader in 15 seconds. And so now, after this fight, he's going to be going up against Francis Ngannou, allegedly. They did say that was going to be the case, but at the same time, I don't feel like they would want that to be the case. Because Francis Ngannou is fighting up against Anthony Joshua, which, by the way, I'm coming out later on this week with an Anthony Joshua Francis Ngannou video. But with this, he's 6'8", 257, 85 inches of reach. 85 inches of reach. I think John Jones has 82. And even for the heavyweight division, that is absolutely monstrous. The closest guy that he had reach wise was 79 inches with Ante Deligia, who's 6'5". Which, I mean, Francis Ngannou is around 6'5", 6'6", so he would actually be shorter than Renan Ferreira. And he'd probably have less power. That'd probably be the first person I would actually think he has less power than. Now, I do have to watch the Fabricio Verdum versus Renan Ferreira fight, because that does seem like it would be a really good tale on how the Francis Ngannou fight would be if it did go to the ground. But with that, I mean, it was all around, it's been a crazy week for UFC. I'm gonna be coming back with a couple more videos. I've just been kind of away for a little bit, kind of doing my own thing. Yeah, I'm still new to this game, so it's like I'm just trying to figure out my own stuff. You know, if I get a following, I get a following. If I don't, I don't. I'm just trying to get it to where I get at least a live going so that I can actually talk to people live rather than just doing this. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. I got to get ready for work, and I will catch you guys next week.